Good evening. Good evening and welcome to Poetry at the Dalí, which tonight is a joint venture with the Eckerd College National Poetry Week month. They're giving us a month this year. Reading series. We are very appreciative of Eckerd College joining with us in this venture. And that's a product of a collaboration with our series curator, Helen Pruitt Wallace, who is Poet Laureate of St. Petersburg. It's my pleasure to introduce first tonight in this evening of exceptional poetry, K.C. Wolfe. K.C. is chair of the Creative Arts Collegium at Eckerd College and a writer and teacher himself. He is the founder and editor of Sweet in 2008 and continues as editor of Sweet Aperitifs, which is the publishing product of this magazine. He also is a faculty advisor to the student publication Currents. Now, the only difficulty we have in open air at the Dalí is the airport. And the sound of those motors, I think we'll ask Aimee to just pause whenever she feels that the sound is getting too high. I wanted to remind you of the words of the poet who said, there's a line break there, who said, "It is difficult to get the news from poetry, but good men and women perish every day from lack thereof." So we rejoice having you here to get the news. Please welcome K.C. Wolfe.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I just really want to briefly thank you for your attendance. Thank you, Aimee, for coming all the way down here. And Hank and Kim and Helen and our collaborators here at Dalí. I hope this is the beginning of a long-term relationship for us. I also want to thank our funders for this, which is the Dr. Peter Menke Fund for Creative Writing and some funding from the Office of the President. And for everyone who really helped to put this together. And I'm going to leave this space and open it up for our very own Poet Laureate of St. Petersburg, Helen Wallace, who will introduce Aimee.
Hi, it's so good to see everybody back in this space. Thank you all for coming out. Gosh, it's been over 2 years, right? I mean, it's really good to see your faces. And I know some of you may have been watching us on the Dalí YouTube channel, and if you have been, thank you for that. And if you're tuning in tonight, because we are being streamed, if you're tuning in tonight, we thank you for watching us that way as well. K.C., terrific job putting this together. And I want to say, before I introduce our guest reader, I want to say thanks especially to Eckerd College, which has a big place in my heart, my having taught there as well, for launching this terrific series for National Poetry Month. And also big thanks to Dr. Hank Hine back here, and also Laura Hine, director of the James Museum, power couple, and also a member of our school board. So, but Hank has been so supportive of the Dalí Poetry Series when we started back in 2016, and we appreciate it so much. I want to say that it's a real delight, though, to be collaborating with Eckerd. And National Poetry Series is always when you try to bring the best poets in, and tonight is no exception. We're so delighted to have Aimee. In her poem, "I Could Be a Whale Shark," Aimee Nezhukumatathil reminds us you can never know where or why you hear a humming on this soft earth. For those of us lucky enough to read her words and feel her spirit in her words, even during our darkest days, we've known a lot of those, right, over the last couple of years. Aimee tells us that tenderness still lingers in the air. And those are important words for us, especially right now with all the craziness in the world. Through rich language and detailed imagery, her essays and poems enact tenderness. Aimee is the author of a book of nature essays, World of Wonders, in Praise of Fireflies, Whale Sharks, and Other Astonishments, which was named a finalist for the Kirkus Prize in Nonfiction. She's also published 4 award-winning poetry collections, most recently Oceanic in 2018. Awards for her writing include fellowships from the Mississippi Arts Council, the Mississippi Institute of Arts and Letters Award for Poetry, and the National Endowment of the Arts and Guggenheim Foundation. So her writings has appeared in the NYTimes Magazine, ESPN, the magazine, and Best American Poetry 2015. She's professor of English and creative writing at the University of Mississippi's MFA program. Please join me in welcoming Aimee Nezhukumatathil. Welcome, Aimee.
Thank you all so much, and Casey in particular. Thank you everybody for bringing me out here. I'm going to try and conjure up my high school speech and debate training to project through the birds and the mockingbirds and the cranes and the wind and everything like that. But if you don't, if it starts getting muffled, please someone in the back just like wave and I'll get the cue. I'm so delighted to be here. I haven't been back to Florida since I think May 2021. And I'm happy that I wanted to give a shout out to my sister and her family who are here as well. They live in St. Petersburg. So it's been it's a little bit of a whirlwind trip. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read some poems. I'm going to read a little bit, just a small selection of World of Wonders, which is a bunch of short nature essays. And then I will field some questions. So be thinking of some good questions, especially the students in the audience as well. All right. Everything you could hear, every last. I'll try not to jostle too much. All right, I did not plan this, but my students have pointed out that I often have glitter on my fingernails. And this is the first poem I had already planned weeks ago when I was prepping for this. And it talks about having glitter on the fingernails. So I wanted to point that out so you didn't think I was being extra. I did not plan it. But this is a small poem called In Praise of My Manicure. Because I was taught all my life to blend in, I want my fingernails to blend out. Like preschoolers who stomp their rain boots in a parking lot, like coins who wink at you from the scatter bottom of a fountain, like red starfish who wiggle a finger dance at you, and like green kathakali dancers who shape their hands into a bit of a hello with a shape called an Anjali. I tell you, from now on, my children and their children will hold 4 fingers up, a palavam, a fresh sprout with no more shame, no more shrink, and if the bright colors and glittered stars of my fingernails scares you, I will shape my fingers into a saparisasu, my favorite, the hand gesture called a snake. It slides down my wrist and into each finger. Just look at these colors. So marvelous, so fabulous. So the 2 snakes where my brown arms once were. See that movement near my elbow, now at my wrist? Did you know a snake heart can slide up and down the length of its body when it needs to? You'll never be able to catch my pulse. You'll never be able to catch my shine. A few months ago, I was trying to explain this to a group of high schoolers, and they had no idea what I was talking about. And then it dawned on me, they weren't really born when this happened. But do you all know there was a documentary on penguins that was Oscar nominated, and it was narrated by who? Do you guys know this? Morgan Freeman, yes, thank you. They thought it was hilarious that they didn't know that a documentary on penguins could win an Oscar and Morgan Freeman, of all people, would be narrating. But this poem is kind of takes its cue from one moment in that documentary. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you'll have to check it out on YouTube. There's something pretty majestic when you hear Morgan Freeman's voice as these penguins on the bottom of the earth are just waddling their way around, trying to find their way. This is a Valentine poem, and this is called Penguin Valentine. Praise the patience of a penguin. I don't envy those dark starlit nights with only the occasional blush green current of Aurora Borealis on his claws. See how sweetly the papa penguin holds the egg close in its brood pouch? I am certain his fierce tenderness would scare even a crab-eater seal 5 times his size. What exactly does the papa penguin register in a nighttime that lasts 2 whole months? During those days of no sun, does he remember the particular bend of his mate's neck, what hint of yellow near her ears? Or does he hunger for a slip of hooked squid, worry the grand gulp of air he must take, the concentration needed to slow down his own heart? Praise the faithfulness of the papa penguin. Praise the resolve, the lanceolate feathers, shaped like tiny spears, perfect to poke through a cartoon heart to signal Valentine. And Valentine, I sing your praises not because I know you'll wait for me like that, though I know you would if you could, but because you never waver. I don't know how you know what direction to look and how to listen for my return, even when my call boils from the floor of the darkest of Antarctic seas, even if, for now, all we can see is a cast of red crabs stretching before our path. This is kind of a prose poem, kind of tells the story about my favorite dessert, which is a Filipino dessert called halo-halo. And I think, is it St. Petersburg that has a Filipino food festival, or is it Tampa? Is it St. Petersburg? Something. I know that somewhere on the west coast of Florida, there's a Filipino food festival. So, okay. Gosh, I could have sworn it was somewhere on the west coast here. Where I'm from, I live about an hour away from Memphis. So it was my great surprise. This was written last year. The very first instance of Filipino food was found, and I've been searching, and of all places, Memphis. So this is called Finding Halo-halo in Memphis. The double-double of the word on your lips when you say it promises you will never be in a bad mood when you order it from a restaurant. On Mother's Day, my Filipino mom and I are usually together, but because of the pandemic, we have opted not to travel this year. So instead, I head to Memphis, home of her favorite singer, whose motto, taking care of business, she learned soon after she arrived in this country. Those wrought iron gates, custom inlaid with guitars and musical notes meant to signal superstar. We've since learned Elvis's favorite food from his mama was nothing fancy, just bananas, bread, and peanut butter, even when he became a millionaire. So of course I slam on the brakes when I spy a picture of my mom's favorite dessert on Macon Road here, and I drag my whole family inside for some ice-cold joy first concocted on the other side of this planet. Maybe because in Tagalog, halo-halo means mix. I carry a special fondness for it because my mom married a man from India who also loved Elvis, even shaped his sideburns like him. So that means I am mix too. And because I married the sweetest white man from Kansas, our boys are mix. You never know what you're going to discover and when. Each spoonful promises a richness of delights: shaved ice, nata de coco, diced jackfruit, sweet beans, sweet corn. The signature pop of purple from ube ice cream shouts, yes! And if you're lucky, they'll put leche flan on top. Go ahead, mix it all up. Mix. Once, when we visited frozen Niagara Falls in the middle of an ice storm, a man told me he wanted to live with me forever after knowing me just a few weeks. How are you so sure? I asked him. How do you know so soon? And the man who is now, you guessed correct, my husband, simply said, I just do. I had no idea what our cups would hold, what our future would be, but I knew then it would be so sweet. I thought I'd read. I saw them on the drive out from Tampa Airport this morning, so I thought I'd read my brown pelican poem. Brown pelicans are all over the southern part of Mississippi where I live, and so but there's been kind of a sadness going on with their eggs, which I didn't know about until I moved to Mississippi. So this is a short poem called Brown Pelican. My favorite afternoon emergency is an emergency of pelicans. When the shore sizzles too hot to walk barefoot, I scan the horizon for these goofy birds, their yellow neck scruff half hidden when they twist their head onto their own shoulders for a nap. I love how they fly so solidly in one direction, but when the dazzle of a grass minnow catches their eye, how they can zip shift on a dime. How they can plunge head first over 60 feet in the air in a plash gobble to swallow anything their throat pouch might hold. In the 60s, brown pelicans ate menhaden fish sopped with so much DDT, their eggshells grew too thin and crushed under the weight of their feathered parent. What a gulp and cry you would hear then. Their gular skin trembles and joins their lower neck to their beak and lets their whole famous pouch hold almost 3 whole gallons of gulf. And perhaps it also holds every heart sound you've ever claimed to seek. I'm going to read just, I'm going to check the time, just one more, and then I'm going to switch it over to some short lyric essays. This is Invitation, and it's the it's not the title poem, but where I got the title from my collection, Oceanic. Invitation. Come in, the water is fine. You can't get lost here. Even if you wanted to hide behind a clutch of spiny oysters, I'll find you. If you ever leave me at night by boat, you'll see the arrangement of golden sun stars in a sea of milk, and though it's tempting to visit them, stay. I've been trained to look up and up all my life, no matter the rumble on earth, but I've learned it's okay to glance down once in a while into the sea. So many lessons bubble up if you just know where to look. Clouds of plankton hurricaning in open whale mouths will send you east, and chewy urchins can slide you west. Squid know how to be rich with 10 empty arms. Underneath you, narwhals spin upside down while their singular tooth needles you like a compass pointed towards home. Deep where imperial volutes and hatchetfish live, colors humans have not even named glow in caves made from black coral and clamshell. Just yesterday, a giant squid finally let itself be captured in a photograph, and paper nautilus ripple flashes scarlet and 2 kinds of violet when it silvers you near. Who knows what will happen next? If you want to still look up, I hope you see the dark sky as oceanic, boundless, limitless, like all the shades of blue revealed in a glacier. Let's listen. Let's really listen how this planet hums with so much wing, so much fur, and fin. All right. This is from the book that I'm working on right now, which is a bunch of short essays on food. And this is, when I say short essays, I mean like 2 to 3 page essays. I'm still a poet at heart. And just kind of the origins, kind of natural history with like maybe a touch of memoir in it. This is on chocolate, specifically chocolate during the first year of the pandemic. And it starts off with an epigraph by former Poet Laureate Rita Dove, who has a poem that says, "Velvet fruit, exquisite square, I hold up to sniff between my finger and thumb." This is chocolate. Some people are perfectly fine without it. My friend Ross jokes that he can go for months at a time and not even notice. I too felt like that about chocolate. That is, until the pandemic started. When schools and restaurants first shut down last year, my family stocked up on, this is 2020, my family stocked up on essentials as if planning for a hurricane or a tornado. When I ordered groceries online from our local market, I threw in a couple of travel-sized bottles of hand sanitizer. It's all I could find in those frantic early days. And then I also threw in a Tony's Chocolonely chocolate bar, just because it made me happy, and I confess, seeing the word lonely on the bright red wrapper made me feel a little less lonesome. Now here's the things you can buy online made entirely of chocolate: a camera, a teapot, a key, a golf ball, a complete toolkit. You can buy a hammer, wrench, saw, and pliers. You could buy food that looks like it was dipped in it: an orange, a piece of toast with an egg and bacon on top, complete with a chocolate fork and knife. You can buy a box of Brussels sprout-shaped chocolates painted green. Also green, Yoda. Chocolate chess sets, a watch, handcuffs, a gun with chocolate bullets, a high-heeled shoes, a rose, bunnies, of course, a pair of lips, and for someone truly out of this world, you can buy a whole chocolate solar system of planets, minus Pluto, much to my chagrin. In Austin, Texas, I'm particularly fond of Madu chocolates, who sources their cacao from the Tumaco region of Colombia, and then they roast, crack, winnow, grind, flavor, temper, and wrap all their chocolate bars by hand. My father says their masala chai dark chocolate reminds him of the chai he used to drink back home in Kerala. This past summer, we lost my paternal grandmother, the greatest cook I've ever known. Doesn't everyone feel that same way about their grandmothers? And because of the travel restrictions, none of us were able to attend her funeral in India. I won't pretend eating chocolate helped our grief across the ocean in any way, but I wonder about all the families all over the planet unmoored by so much separation these days. Now, when we eat chocolate, our brains release dopamine as a way to activate pleasure and pleasurable feelings. And someone, somewhere, once imagined whole planets of chocolates, maybe to soothe a loneliness bubbling up. Some heavy days, it feels like perhaps we could all use a universe of chocolates, something to help ease our losses, big and small. Maybe just a few stars or a nebula for all the graduations, the weddings, the births, and the funerals we've missed. Perhaps something to conjure up a taste of India, even in northern Mississippi, where I live. Go ahead. You know you want to. Next time you order something online, add another couple bars of chocolate to your cart. And the last one I'm going to read is from World of Wonders. I'm just going to read a snippet of it. And my book, World of Wonders, was published kind of right in the middle of the pandemic. It is a collection of 33 short, very, very short nature essays on different plants and animals. Not that I'm an expert in them, but 30 plants and animals that I had a lot of questions about. So I wanted to say I am not an ornithologist. I'm not a scientist. And every time I don't say that, I get angry emails later like, this is not correct, da 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 da. So what I mean by that, I'm going to do 2 bird calls for you tonight. I know they are not Audubon approved, but it works for me. Birds come to me, and I don't know what else to tell you, but I have dozens and dozens of witnesses. So please don't send me angry emails that a different bird call, that kind of thing. I'm aware. I'm a poet. Okay. This excerpt is on one of my favorite birds. It's called the potoo. And a little bit of happy homework assignment for you today is if you don't know what a potoo is, and that's the Potoo, you have to Google it. It's so cute, so funny, and it almost looks like a Muppet. You can't even believe that this is an actual bird. It also, my book also has illustrations of it as well, but it's still like seeing a live version of it on YouTube is just amazing. All right, the potoo. In Mississippi, summer means mosquito. It means tomatoes, it means mosquito, it means peaches, it means humidity, it means strawberries, and it means mosquito. Mostly mosquito. I counted 5 while sitting here on my deck, having a coffee at 7:30 in the morning. What I wouldn't do to have a little potoo bird or 3 in my backyard to catch these bloodthirsty beasties. Some people refer to this bird as little more than a flying mouth and eyes, but potoos are pretty much masters of disguise in the humid jungles of the southern hemisphere. Potoos are nocturnal and so confident of their camouflaging skills, they just sleep right out in the open daylight. They close their giant yellow eyes, tilt their heads towards the tree, and position their feathers to resemble a broken tree branch that even the sharpest eye struggles to discern what is tree and what is bird. Only a feather ruffle of wind betrays their otherwise otherworldly stillness. Even when they are hungry, they simply wait for insects to fly close and then dart out and return to their home branch with their catch. For a bird famous for its stoic stillness, the potoo's call would sound so comical if it didn't sound so scary. Now imagine this. If your eyes were closed, you could never imagine, you couldn't picture it came from such an austere-looking creature. The call is what you would get if you combined a tiger roar with a frog croak, if both animals were in severe gastrointestinal distress. So for example, if I were in a Brazilian rainforest and I heard this cry, I'd pretty much think it was my last day on this planet. That's how chilling and terrifying the potoo cry is. Okay, here's the first of the calls. It's a fairly loud and gruff bwah, descending somewhat like the retching sound of a human. In other words, it's the stuff of nightmares. Perhaps, imagine that you're in the dark, you're walking through, just trying to make your way home, and you hear that right next to your head because it doesn't move. It's not afraid of humans, that kind of thing. Perhaps the reason the potoo leads such a motionless, mainly solitary life is to balance this audacious call. There's a time for stillness, but who also hasn't wanted to scream with delight at being outdoors, to simply announce themselves and say, I am here. I exist. Like the potoo, I grew up wanting to blend in my case, with my blonde counterparts. And why would I know anything else? I felt most seen in my childhood, not by any television shows or movies, but rather when I was outdoors in forests or fields, by lake or ocean. I learned how to be still from watching birds. If I wanted to see them, I had to mimic their stillness, to move slow in a world that wishes us brown girls to be fast. I learned how to call cardinals and have whole conversations with them when I was 6. One of the earliest presents I can remember getting from my father is a cardinal-shaped water whistle. If I fill it with water and blew into the plastic straw of its exaggerated tail, I could mimic the cardinal's distinctive... Okay, here we go, bear with me. I could mimic the cardinal's distinctive hurdy-gurdy, hurdy-gurdy, hurdy-gurdy-gurdy, hurdy-gurdy, hurdy-gurdy, hurdy-gurdy-gurdy, hurdy-gurdy, hurdy-gurdy. Okay, thank you. No angry emails tonight, please. I could mimic that call of the cardinals so well that I could bring cardinals to the edges of our yard, wondering just what I was trying to say to them. These conversations were an absolute secret I kept even from my husband until one late spring day when he came home from work early, only to find me in the backyard having a lengthy discussion with a riled-up male cardinal and his mate. Both birds were perched just over my head. They seemed to enjoy our talk, and then their metallic chirps sounded more and more insistent, and I must have answered back a little too glibly, and then poof! They burst from the tree and ended our talk right then and there. When I turned around, my husband's mouth was frozen open. Reader, we had been married a decade, and this was the first time he had ever seen me do this. I'm certain it's no magic in my mouth, no special twist of tongue that only I have unlocked, but I think it's the quiet way you settle into the crook of a tree trunk, the still and slow down of your heart in a world that wants us to be quick and move on to the next thing. The secret in talking to birds is in the steadiness of each limb as you make your way into their territory, in the deliberateness of each movement and bend of tree grass and grass blade. And just like the potu, who is rewarded for her stillness by having her lunch practically fly right to her mouth, perhaps you could try a little tenderness, a little tranquility, find a little peace in your quiet, because who knows what feathered gifts await. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Whew, thank you for bearing with me with the planes, the birds, the wind. I think now we'll take some questions.
Yes, we have some time for some questions for Aimee, so just raise your hand. And actually, if you want to ask her a question, if you'll come back here and maybe use this mic, that might be the best way to go. So, questions for Aimee, and it can be about poetry or prose. So.
That's right. This is always that weird, awkward, no one wants to be the first person. No question is too big or too small. So
we have Gloria.
Great. Wonderful.
Okay, I'm really excited about your food book.
Thank you.
Big fan of
Thank
nature
you.
and food. I wanted to hear more about your inspiration for it and about the decision to make it hybrid, because there's essays and poetry in there.
Yeah, I think I love the question. So the question is, how are you deciding to make your next collection hybrid? My graduate degrees are both in poetry and prose, and it kind of felt like the next logical choice to, this is all prose. I've had 4 other poetry collections. I feel like we kind of think in hybrid modes. If you think about it, like our first memories are kind of highly imagistic. When you think about, say, your favorite birthdays, you don't ever start off like, first, when I was 1, this happened. Second, when I was 2, this happened. Third, we remember maybe your favorite 20-something birthday. Then you think maybe your 8th grade birthday. Then there's a cake from this moment. And, some guy stood you up at this birthday. It's just, and sometimes you need sentences. Sometimes you need just images and highly concentrated, tension-filled lines. So I feel like hybrid writing in both poetry and prose is kind of, it mimics the human kind of memory the closest that I can think of. And I think honestly too, like I just wanted to switch it up. I never was bored when I was writing World of Wonders, but I just know there were times where I was like, I have to break the line. I wanna keep these lines short, and then other times I wanted to just let the sentences unfurl like a fern, that kind of thing. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. It's due to the editors in January, so it's what I'm working on right now. We'll see. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. More questions.
What else?
So I really love writing nature poetry, but I was curious if you had a favorite environment or place that you like to do your writing and why that might be.
That's so good. I always, I try to tell my students, don't be beholden to electricity for your writing, I'm still slightly old-fashioned. At least my 18-year-old students think so, because I write everything kind of longhand. They just whip out their phones or, they do something on their iPad. I think that's also so good as well. But what happens when there's a hurricane? What happens when you're at a coffee house and all the plugs, all the outlets are full? I don't know. I love the question so much. I just hate being prescriptive. Like, I do this, so you should do it too. I don't want to do that. I think, just going back to the first part of your question, I love writing outside. I mentioned this to the classes I visited earlier today. I also I have to hear what I'm writing out loud, so it doesn't bode well doing it on an airplane, for example, if you don't want your seatmate looking over at you and saying what's going on, or in a coffee house when people are quiet. I also feel like Mother Nature is the best poet, and I'm just trying to take notes. So even if I'm not trying to write nature at all, there's something that kind of surprises me or unlocks a metaphor. And so I just feel like, I don't know, as I was reading, I heard the call of a mockingbird, and the mockingbird is Mississippi state bird. I didn't realize, I guess I knew they were here, but it was just kind of like a fun hello, like, hi, Aimee, from the Mississippi state bird. I don't know that I'm going to write a mockingbird poem now. I probably won't even. But maybe 3 weeks from now, 3 years from now, I might talk about the time I read it at the Dalí Museum and a mockingbird said hello, that kind of thing. So you just never know. The point is to find something that works for you and to keep searching if you are feeling like classroom or a desk isn't working for me, coffee house isn't working for me, under a tree is not working for me. Just find something that works. Yeah. Keep switching it up. Yeah. Good question. Yeah.
Hi, I was just wondering, what made you decide to go to prose and specifically prose for World of Wonders?
That's such a good question. I know there's some people here in the audience, so who were here at my earlier, or who were at the earlier discussion. But I love the question so much, so I'll try not to bore those people. But at the same time, I know there's a bunch of new people here as well. When I was writing about these, I actually started off the not so secret, dirty little secret is that I didn't intend to write prose. These were kind of like a bedtime collection of kind of stories that I would tell the boys who were, my children were 6 and 9 at the time. And they had a lot of questions about what was going on politically at the time, like, Mommy, what does build that wall mean? Mommy, why are you brown? Daddy's white? That kind of thing, like, what color am I? I did not prompt any of these questions. These were all, I was just kind of trying to put them to bed, that kind of thing. But I just found so much tenderness and innocence in these questions. I wanted the last thing that they thought of before bed to be the, animals and plants that I just was in awe of, that I am in awe of, like the narwhal, the axolotl, the potu, monarch butterflies. And then, I didn't say today I will write a book, that kind of thing. It was more of just like, let me try to remember that. I was honestly writing for my kids' baby books, but then they started gelling and coalescing around 2016. Then more and more people were asking me for, can you do more about nature? And so if you see in this book, you'll see wisps of, you could tell that this is a mother talking to her children, but I also revised it, obviously I revised it many, many times for a more general audience. not to be like, oh, I know all there is to know about a narwhal, but rather I have so many questions about being a narwhal, or like, what is it? How do narwhals live? Honestly, how do they eat with their giant teeth sticking out of their head? And I found I couldn't answer those questions for my son without also they ask questions about my childhood. So it kind of just blended naturally. I didn't say, I'm going to write about a narwhal. Now I'm going to write about when I was in 6th grade. It just kind of, it developed from their questions. So what I would say is I wanted these sentences to be full of tenderness. I wanted these sentences to be full of jubilation, but also to not shy away from some hard, uncomfortable things. Like, I moved around a lot when I was a kid. Sometimes I was super lonesome. Sometimes I was not. And I think that's real. I think it would be totally dishonest if I said like, everything was awesome in junior high. Like who has an awesome junior high time? I don't know. I've never met that person. So yeah, that's kind of a big answer to your question, but the things I wanted to say could not fit in a poem. And yet I'm still a poet at heart. So writing 3 pages, 5 pages felt like I ran a 5K, So I got in, got out, wrote about the POTU. That's a 5-page essay, and I just read a snippet of it. I have essays that are like 2 pages, really mini essays. But it was all, Robert Frost says, no surprise for the writer, no surprise for the reader. And this was the biggest surprise to date, in so many ways. Yeah. Thank you. Other questions?
Other questions for Aimee?
Maybe one more?
I have a follow-up for you, Aimee.
Absolutely.
So both in your book of essays, but also in your poems, it feels as if you've done a fair amount of research, and yet you weave it in a way that is never, too obvious. I mean, you have such a naturalness in the way that you read the information. And can you talk a little bit about the role of research in writing? For both poetry and nonfiction.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm laughing because it's like, oh no, I have to say this, and I know we're being recorded. Okay, so here's the truth. I'm trying to just be as honest as possible. The secret is I'm a big nerd. I've been a big nerd for as long as I can remember. So it seems like that's amazing. That's the biggest compliment ever, to say that it seems like there's a lot of research. It's just kind of because I've been reading about these things since I was, sitting on the floor of my elementary school library. The only thing I had to actually look up was just get measurements right, because I wanted to make sure. But, my close friends know I could talk about a peacock, I could talk about axolotls, how they breathe, and that's just, my idea of a good Friday night is reading about the hunt for the giant squid, so. If anything, I had to tamp it down in poems. And, for the longest time, I will say, though, what I love about that question is that's the stuff that I loved. I actually didn't read a whole lot of literature growing up because the literature in the 70s and 80s was so, now children's literature is amazing and vibrant. Back then, it was Bob went to the store, Bob bought a cake, Bob lost the cake, help Bob find the cake. And then I was like, Bob sounds like a moron, I had no interest. But what I loved is the stories of someone exploring a volcano. And my dad could vouch for me. I had stacks of books that were, corny jokes, but so much science. And so that's just kind of how I think in some ways. If I'm talking about a breakup or a childhood memory, the way I make sense of it is remembering metaphors from either things I've witnessed in the outdoors or things from books that I've just been reading and still read, I have a book that's on, if you were to take a peek at my writing desk right now, I have something on the pufferfish, just how the pufferfish, see, I told you I'm a nerd, but how the pufferfish, do you all know what a pufferfish is? How it digests its food. And that's not for a project. I'm just reading that because I think it's fascinating. So, there's kind of no research. I just read a lot. And I'm not probably supposed to say this as a literature professor, but I actually read double the science books than I do literature, just because that's my fun reading, that kind of thing. Yes. Thank you. I really, when it comes down to it, to boil it down, I'm just a nerd. Sorry.
Well, thank you. Any other questions? Oh, here you are. Yes, please.
Oh, yeah.
Hi.
Hi there.
So I just want to say it's been so great to hear you read your poetry. When reading your poems, I was able to assign a tone to them through your imagery, but hearing you do it, it was just such a great experience, specifically your bird calls. So I believe all of us could relate to having a curiosity for whether or not you have any more bird calls that you could demonstrate.
It sounds like the world's worst party trick, right? Like, and again, how nerdy can I be? Like, I can't juggle, I can't ride a unicycle, but I know bird calls. Let me see. There's one, the yellow warbler. This is the only one I'll do. Just because the mnemonic version of the yellow warbler is so sweet. If you don't know this bird, it's the word sweet, but the yellow warbler goes sweet, 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 sweet. I'm so sweet, 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 sweet. I'm so sweet, 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 sweet. I'm so sweet. And that one is Audubon approved. So you can fact check me, angry ornithologists out there. That is, it's just sweet, sweet, sweet. I'm so sweet. That's the yellow warbler. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Aimee, thank you so much for that terrific reading. Another big round for Aimee, please.
Thank you so much.
A shout out to the Dalí staff, John, Kim, Joy, all of you. Thank you so much for your help in putting this together.
Yes.
Again, to Eckerd College for this collaboration. Loved having you, Aimee. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.